Hello, hello, hello. I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you all for tuning in. I saw some people coming on and off, and I know that's how it always goes in the beginning. But I want to welcome you all to Lupus in Color and the Healthy Kitchen with the Lupus Dietitian. I'm so excited to hear everything she has to teach us and everything she has to offer us regarding health and wellness as far as eating is concerned and as far as keeping our health very good as we battle lupus. But before I do that, I just want to really just have a little disclaimer. We always do these disclaimers here as we are giving information out. And, you know, with Lupus in Color, we're always out here to educate, inspire, encourage, and empower. But the information and our answers provided during Lupus in Color videos and live events are not meant to be used as a substitute for professional medical advice. Information provided may differ from your physician's advice. So, the information provided and presented is for educational purposes only to support attendees in the quest to learn more about a most silent disease. Please, 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 I can't stress this enough. Please check with your own physician before changing anything in your treatment plan, including your diet. The information contained in any video or live stream is not intended to be recommended as self-management or health problems or wellness. So it is not intended to endorse or recommend any particular type of medical treatment. Should you or anybody else that's listening on this call have any healthcare related questions, promptly call your or consult your physician or healthcare provider. No information provided should be used by an attendee to disregard medical and or health related advice or provide a basis to delay consultation with their personal physician or qualified healthcare provider. Anybody who's accessing this information assumes full responsibility for the use of the information and understand and agree that Lupus in Color and its presenters are not responsible or liable for any claim, loss, or damage arising from the use of information. So now that we got that all out the way, we always have to do that because you just never know. You know, you want to make sure that people are consulting with their doctors. Everything that we're doing is just for educational purposes and to help you to get past some difficult moments with lupus. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring the lupus dietitian up to the floor and we're going to get started. Here we go. Hi, Tanya.
Hello. How
How
are
are
you?
you? I am good. How about yourself?
Good, good. Thank you so much for asking. Can y'all
Uh,
hear me okay? Everything's good?
everybody can hear you. Let me get a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear. If not, I'm pretty sure they can. How about on Instagram? Seems like people can hear. Someone says
Great.
thank you for your platform. So Tanya, it's so good to be here with you today. Do me a favor. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? How long have
Sure.
you had lupus? Give me a little synopsis.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is a great place and 100% agree with Raquel. So, the information I provide, I am a registered dietitian, is beneficial. It is, and it helps people no matter what. But you, as an individual, the doctor knows you best. So while these sorts of things can be helpful for people with lupus, always talk to your doctor. It's really important. But that kind of started into my segue. So I am a registered dietitian. I have been licensed and been practicing and counseling people for more than a decade now on all sorts of nutritional concerns, whether it's diabetes, heart disease,
Mhm.
lupus, food allergies, oh, everything, cancer. I've worked in a lot of different places, in a hospital setting first, and then outpatient so that I could really follow people along in their journey. Hopefully, not most of y'all have spent any time in the hospital, but usually it's kind of quick in and out. It's so overwhelming. You're not talking to the dietitian and being like, yes, I can do all of this. You talk to the doctor, you get your medications or whatever has changed, and you're like, get me out of here. I just want to go home. Yeah. So then I moved outpatient. That way I could speak to people much longer. I could follow up with them. They could come back. We could make really significant changes in their diet and their lifestyle. And then they could see those benefits too. So that's really exciting. Um, So that's my career. But me personally, and why I have decided to be the lupus dietitian, is that I actually started my autoimmune journey when I was very young. When I was 12 years old, I was first diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which
Mm,
unfortunately is autoimmune for your thyroid. So starting at 12, I already had to take one pill a day. Unfortunately, y'all know with autoimmune things, they just love each other. So you start with one, and then it's like Pokemon. You're collecting them all, unfortunately. And so I just kept getting new ones and a new diagnosis here, a new diagnosis there. I was always really on top of it, like seeing my doctors, getting blood work done. I was
right.
always paying attention to what was going on with my body, thankfully. So usually things were caught pretty early, but it just kept like snowballing.
Mm,
So I had other diagnoses like autoimmune hepatitis. The shortened version is ITP, which is idiopathic thrombocytopenia, which is a mouthful for a lot of people. Anyway, so it just kept going. And then finally, when I was in my 20s, I was seeing my regular doctor, and I was like, you know what? I really don't feel good. And the medication regimen that they've been on, that I had been on, actually in different flares, even before I was diagnosed with lupus, were a lot of the lupus medications.
mhm.
Um, anyway, so they finally ran the labs. And I mean, this is already, how old was I? I was in my late 20s, because I have been diagnosed for 7 years now. So all of that time where I had autoimmune diseases, I never tested positive for ANA. And
Wow.
finally, I did test positive for it. And they were like, oh, it could have been lupus all
Right.
this time,
Mhm.
because lupus is the great mimicker. It does a bunch of stuff all over your body and pops up here and pops up there. Yeah. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I was diagnosed with lupus, and then the first year or two, it was really bad. I had a lot of really severe flares. My symptoms were joint pain and muscle pain, the
Mm.
butterfly rash. Those were my worst symptoms. And actually, if y'all like playing in the chat, feel free to put in your symptoms or what you experience when you have a flare. I would love to hear. It seems like a lot of people tell me that the fatigue and the joint pain and the muscle pain are some of the things that they really, really struggle with.
Right. Right. Definitely the joint pain, the fatigue. I go through a whole itching fit. I'm not
Mm,
sure. I'm trying to see if people are saying anything in the other chat. Just different things that just
hmm.
are crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
So
I'm
so
sorry.
you were so
Hmm.
you were diagnosed very early on.
Yes. Yeah. Thankfully, I at least had doctors that were paying attention.
Right.
Unfortunately, I have heard a lot of women have heard something like, oh, it's anxiety, oh, it's stress,
Hmm.
and kind of get disregarded, which is a big problem all in
Right.
of itself. Yes, thankfully, I did have doctors that were paying attention and did believe me. And also, I was just lucky enough to have lab work. Oh, we have one comment. Yeah, joint pain, fatigue, rash, hair loss, for sure.
Some people are saying on Instagram ulcers, chronic itch.
Hmm.
Um, what else have I seen? Migraines.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
many
yeah.
different things that can
Hmm.
happen while you're dealing with lupus.
For sure. Um, And actually, that is what inspired me. So I was already a dietitian at that point, and I had been for years. I was eating, quote unquote, healthy.
Right.
But the thing was that my body just did not like it. It said, nope, I'm still inflamed. And then I kept getting more and more autoimmune diseases. And flares are no fun. So I'm now married to the same person that was my boyfriend back then, when I was having some of my most severe flares. And for me to get out of bed was like a 5 minute occurrence, like a little, very slow caterpillar, like inching my way out, or a little
Right.
snail,
Right.
whatever. um, and then, granted, he's a wonderful person. That's why I married him. But he had to help me get dressed, and he had to like put my backpack together so I could carry it to go to work. I
Yeah.
couldn't open the doorknob. I could not do anything. And that morning time was the most severe. And then I would like hobble myself to work.
Right.
And thankfully for me, like the fatigue was all the time, but the joint and the muscle pains were the worst in the morning and they would fade. The severe itching, hair loss, joints. Yeah. Unfortunately, the lupus really affects everyone so differently.
Yeah,
Um,
it does. Did you find that you said you were already a dietitian? Did you
mhm,
like just completely change your
mm,
mindset about eating, even as a dietitian, even though you stated that you felt like you were eating
yeah.
well? Did you have
Hmm.
to change your whole mindset for that?
That's a great question. So, because I had had so many autoimmune diseases already, I was pretty much on the philosophy like go as unprocessed as possible. Try to get in foods that look like how they came out of the ground or from an
Right,
animal, like not too weird looking.
right,
So, I was already doing that. The reason that I say that I was already quote unquote eating healthy, but not seeing the results that I wanted was that, and definitely we'll go into great detail about this, that unfortunately for lupus, there are some things that are just triggering. And I did want to explain kind of how that works. So, lupus is inflammation everywhere. And we all know that it's autoimmune. So, unfortunately, it's our immune system attacking itself and then making more and more inflammation. Now, a lot of those symptoms we're all really familiar with: the joint pain, the fatigue, the rashes, the swelling, the fever, all signs of inflammation. Now, an instance of acute inflammation, like, oh, oops, I got a paper cut,
right.
easy peasy. Little bit of flushed skin, pain, tenderness, swelling, a little bit of heat. But then that chronic inflammation, like what we're all dealing with autoimmune, is can cause things like abdominal pain, chest pain, fatigue, fever, joint pain, stiffness, mouth sores, skin
Mm,
rash,
yeah,
itching. That sort of chronic inflammation where everything is just activated in your body.
right.
Um, Unfortunately, can cause a bunch of symptoms in a bunch of different places and run you down too. That fatigue of just like your body working so hard.
Yeah, yeah. And it
Yeah.
becomes like almost like a habit for your body. You know,
Hmm.
once it starts, it's just like you said, it's just a tumbling rock, just
Yes.
picking up all different types of stuff. Someone said over on Instagram she was plant-based,
Mm,
and stress was still involved. So she still had
yes.
flares. Yeah.
Yes.
And
So that's a big deal. Definitely stress, definitely running yourself ragged. If you're not getting enough sleep and you're doing all the other right things, your body could still be inflamed because it's just not getting that rest and recovery time.
right,
Um, Back to your question about like, okay, well, what was I doing in my diet that was not working for me, even though it was quite
right,
quote unquote healthy, was the things that caused inflammation. So I had to figure out through trial and error. Oh wow. And this is just for me. I don't want y'all like writing this down and be like, this works for everyone.
right,
Actually, that's part of my job is not only for people with lupus, but for everybody. The same exact thing doesn't work for everyone.
right,
But I had to find what works for me. Now, big picture, there are some things that do affect a big proportion of people with lupus. So for me personally, it was gluten and dairy,
mm,
and they did not work for me. And so that was causing that constant inflammation. And the problem is now you've got this constant inflammation. Your body starts kind of getting mad about everything.
right,
So
right.
it cross reacts. Whereas when it's already got its defenses on such high alert, I found at the very beginning that, for example, I couldn't tolerate something like nightshades. And now that I've eliminated gluten and dairy for so long, I can have a little bit of nightshades here and there and actually tolerate it just fine because it's not already so upset.
Right.
Go
So
ahead.
tell
Go
us,
ahead.
for those of us that aren't familiar with what nightshades are, would you
Ah,
explain
yes.
an example of what nightshades might be?
Yes, thank you so much. So, nightshade vegetables are a subgroup of vegetables in general. And they're part of one family.
Mhm.
The concept is that there's something in there that's just a little bit more inflammatory for some people. Those specific examples would be like tomatoes, tomatillos, bell peppers, but also some other types of peppers, like the spicier peppers,
Mhm.
and eggplant. Those are the ones that are most commonly eaten. And some people just tolerate them fine and it's no big deal.
Right.
Sometimes, like, let's say if you haven't found your body's like really offending food, then
Right.
you could be having a reaction to that just because you're getting so much inflammation.
Mhm.
And if people are familiar with like food allergies, it's usually a protein in something that your body says, I don't like this, and starts to kind of wage a little bit of a war against it, like more
Yeah.
inflammation.
Yeah, and that
Hmm.
I think that it's important, and I tell a lot of people this, and you tell me if it's something that suggest to your clients maybe. To use a food journal, it's real
Yes.
important for you to like really pinpoint what foods
Hmm.
might cause you a little more inflammation than someone else. Like I might be able to tolerate tomatoes,
Hmm.
but Susan might not be able to tolerate it. So, do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a great idea. Yes, 100%. Because not only can you figure out what's bothering you, you can also figure out kind of your tolerance level.
Right.
So, for that nightshades, for example, like I can tolerate it sometimes, but not all the time. So, maybe it's the magic sauce of if I hadn't gotten enough rest, if I'm feeling
Mhm.
stressed, and I throw the nightshades in, then my body's like, you know what, enough's enough. I'm not happy about this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good
So
that's
it
a good point.
100%. Hmm.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's all of it together. I mean, the scientific research, doctors will talk about this. Lupus is caused by kind of intersecting three things. So we've got hormones, we've
Mhm.
got genetics, and we've got your environment.
Mhm.
And that's the sweet spot that I can help people with environment and a little bit of the hormones because it is affected how we eat and how we treat our body. Yeah. And those three factors kind of intertwine with each other and will really affect if you're having flares all the time or if you're
Right.
feeling pretty good all the time.
Right. And that whole getting a good balance in between
Yes.
all three really helps. Really
Mhm.
helps.
Mhm.
Someone on Instagram, Everything Warrior, says there's a lot of herbs that also cause flares.
Yes, there are. So one that is the most researched that I can say pretty definitively should just be avoided by everyone with lupus. This has really strong research behind it. Is alfalfa sprouts.
Yes.
Um, yes, so definitely it just avoid it. Thankfully, that's not something that you're really running into on the street corner all the time. Like it's just not in our food.
Well, sprout.
Yeah, right.
It's
Um,
definitely something you have to go looking for.
you do. You would have to go out of your way for it. So, yes, please don't. But
Yeah.
there are other herbs. The key to way to think about it is there is immune boosting and immune modulating. So, pardon my skipping over the words a little bit, but
That's all right.
boosting means that you're going to increase the activity of your immune system, whereas
Right.
modulating helps your immune system figure out, is this a real threat or is it not a real threat?
Right.
Yeah, so that's
Right.
where it gets really tricky because the claims for some of these herbs and spices and supplements is it can say both, honestly, because people slap some weird claims on things. So
They do.
it can be hard. Yeah, it can be really hard to figure out, okay, what's safe for me and what's not.
Right. And I guess it all goes back to like what we were saying, like in the disclaimer. Just always check with your doctor and have a good,
100%.
good conversation with them regarding, well, if do I want to do sea moss? Do I want to do
Hmm.
this? Do I want to do that? Whatever it
Hmm.
is, definitely talk to your doctor because not only can it interact with your body, but it can interact with your medications as well. So
Yeah,
very important.
yeah,
So what
very
are
important.
some anti-inflammatory foods that people could incorporate in their daily living?
Yes, great question. So, one of the things I always bring up with people is omega 3s because a lot of people are not getting enough of this in their diet.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, like a lot of our processed foods are more of the omega 6 uh,
Gotcha.
types of fats. And then stuff like olive oil is omega 9s. So, we're getting it's almost as if we've got like a balance scale. So we're just getting way too much of one and not enough of the other. So if you can rebalance that scale, it is really anti-inflammatory. So omega-3s could be things like fatty fish. I really like sardines. I know people have strong feelings against them. Yeah, there we go. But they are a really good source of omega-3s. I
Really?
understand.
Oh,
But you could do salmon, you could do tuna. These are also kind of strong flavors, but herring or anchovy are also great sources of omega-3s. Ground up flaxseed, chia
mhm.
seeds, walnuts. Yeah, so there's a lot of sources. The fatty fish are really helpful because you're getting a lot from that, and it's also the source of protein at that meal.
Right.
Um, the other thing that I love about sardines, I have my soapbox for the sardines, is that they're also a really great a really great source of calcium and vitamin D. So that's
Mm.
helpful in another way.
Like, do you have like, okay, I don't like sardines at all. Do you have
That's
like
fine.
recipes that you
Yes.
use one, or do you just
Yes.
take a sardine and pop it in your mouth
Oh, no, no, no.
like sardine
And
poppers?
no, so I take it out of a can. And that's actually another question that people usually ask me. Is it okay to eat things out of cans? So I would say for your fatty fish, that's a great thing that is totally okay in cans.
Okay.
It doesn't change the nutritional composition of it. It's not any, like, there's no problem with it. The things I tell people to be careful with in cans is stuff like let's say it's a chili instead of just beans. Like just beans are
Mm.
basically just beans. They're not even adding that much salt to it. But once they
Right.
start adding a lot of seasoning, a lot of flavoring, they're usually adding a lot of salt and probably some preservatives. And same with the veggies. Not such a great idea to eat in cans because they have to heat them so high in terms of
Mm.
temperature to make sure it's safe to stay in the can kind of
Gotcha.
indefinitely. Yeah. So it that kind of, you're losing the nutritional benefit. But back to
So
the
I just,
omega-3s,
so
the
either stick,
sardines.
so either
I'm
stick
sorry.
with fresh or uh frozen. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. The frozen veggies are just as good. And sometimes if something's out of season, instead of getting the fresh one that's like all sad and wilty and doesn't taste like anything, just go ahead, get the frozen one. It's fine. They are flash freezing it. Usually, like the factory or the manufacturing plant is near the farm. So they're flash freezing it right away. And you're getting a pretty fresh product if it stayed frozen the whole time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
omega-3 are the best omega acids to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
What other
Um,
anti-inflammatory foods are there?
oh my goodness, there's so many. Vegetables. So the participant or the watcher viewer that mentioned the plant-based diet is bringing up a really good point. So vegetables are everybody's best friend. Now the nightshades, okay, maybe don't work for everybody, but there
Right.
are, oh, I don't know, a thousand other vegetables in the world that are not nightshade vegetables that are so good for us because they have those phytochemicals, those antioxidants. Like we should all be eating more vegetables, and you want a big portion of it. So if you're looking at a plate like this, the
Mm-hmm.
goal is, okay, can we get 50% of the plate to be veggies? So there we go,
Oh, okay.
50% veggies. And then the other 50%, 25% could be your whole grains, and then
Mhm.
25% could be protein. So I have found a lot of people, regardless of the other details that they put into their diet, do um, well, it depends. Okay. So there's vegetarian, there's vegan, there's keto, there's paleo, there's autoimmune protocol. There's so many like labels on things. Everyone does well if it's got a big portion of vegetables. Now,
Right.
the filling in the blanks of whatever else you want to put really depends on the person. But the veggies are your friends. And there's even been research. So, if anybody out there has lupus nephritis and really worries about getting too much potassium for your kidneys, there is research because that was the old recommendation. Be careful. You don't want to like put too much potassium and phosphorus on your kidneys. It makes them work harder. And so oftentimes people were told really kind of avoid your vegetables. And they've realized that that was wrong and it's not helpful. Now,
Right.
avoid the high potassium ones for sure, but you can still get in big portions of the low potassium vegetables and do
Mhm.
really well. Raquel, I know you asked me one question, and I go like down 20 routes.
No, you're fine. You're
But
fine. You're
yes.
fine. I figured, a conversation about any type of healthy eating and healthy food is always going to go down the alleyway
Yes.
and come back up the valley, So,
Uh-huh. Yes.
I forget who this was that said this. I think it's Tracy on Instagram. What's the
Okay.
best way to test foods?
Ooh, great
It's an
question.
interesting
Good job,
question.
Tracy. Yeah, that is a great question. So, the most like certain way to check your foods is, let's say, if you really pare it down to eating very simply for, let's say, a month, give your body, kind of eliminate all of the things that you think are being a trigger. And Raquel, this is exactly why that food journal is so helpful. I will put a disclaimer on the food journal. If you've ever had any problems with maybe a touch of disordered eating or a little bit of
Mhm.
an eating disorder, I would be careful with that. I would definitely work with a dietitian or a doctor. Maybe that could be triggering for you, where it starts to do a slippery slope back into like hyper control of your eating. But for a lot of other people, the food journal is a great way to notice when the symptoms come and what was the trigger. So, eliminating all the things that you think are going to be the problem, eating very simply for about a month, and then reintroducing one by one is almost what, if anybody has kids with allergies,
Right.
they recommend when you're starting with foods is you just start one, you wait about 3 days, see if anything comes up. If you're feeling good, no problem, then you move on to the next one. And
Right.
it's a process, but
Yeah.
it is the best way, because otherwise, if you're eating outside food a lot, if you're eating a lot of mixed meals, maybe that you're not making yourself, you
Right.
could think, oh, it was definitely this component of it. And then kind of get confused and muddle the issue of, oh, actually, I didn't know that they use this other ingredient in there. And that was the actually triggering thing. So even though it's more time input at the beginning, you may get very clear answers and then save yourself time in the long run.
Yeah, and it's important
Yeah.
because just be patient with yourself as you're trying to
Yeah.
test the different foods in your body, and
Yes.
just be mindful of what you're putting in your mouth and things of that nature.
Mhm.
That was
Mhm.
a very good question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that.
Do you feel like someone asked about the Mediterranean diet?
Mm.
Do you
Mhm.
think that's a good option? I'm not really a diet person. I kind
Mhm.
of like to go with what my body feels good with.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
but someone did have a question about, how do you feel about the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's kind of what I was almost starting to say, the point that I was starting to make about like the diets with labels on them. So oftentimes people will start something like that. And then kind of fall off of it because it's not actually what they want and what they need in their life. Yeah. So if you want to use that as a jumping off point, okay, I'm going to follow this kind of diet loosely. So the Mediterranean diet has a fair amount of research behind it. It's got a lot of vegetables. It's also got a lot of olives, which are those omega 9s. It's not so heavy in the meats. You could certainly follow that kind of like broad framework. Or if
Mhm.
you wanted to be vegetarian for a little while, follow that as well. See if it works for you. And then what I tell people is also life is very short. And following a really, really strict diet of rules that may or may not be exactly what your body needs feels really hard, feels very stressful, and may not even get you the results that make it worth it. So if you find, okay, in broad strokes, the Mediterranean diet works for me, but I really want to include this sort of dish that's nostalgic for me that I grew up eating. Go for it. That's fine. If you find that vegetarian works for you 6 days of the week, but on the seventh day you want to do something with your family and that does not look like a vegetarian meal, that's okay too. Like It's not like it's a chart where, okay, you followed this diet 100%. Now you get 100% of the health benefit. Our body is constantly changing and evolving. Um, so you just have to find that sweet spot between doing
Mm,
good things for your body and also keeping yourself mentally happy.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
such an important point, because I think sometimes when you're doing these diets, it is very rigid, and you feel like
Yes.
you're missing out, and it kind of does mess with you mentally.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing out on something, and it kind of puts a stress on your body that can cause flares, actually.
Yes, it can feel really isolating. And
Yeah,
already a chronic illness can feel very isolating.
right.
Um, Now, granted, I have dietary restrictions, especially before the pandemic. I was certainly socializing quite a bit. It's just I knew, okay, I've got to ask if we're out eating somewhere. I have to ask
Right,
quite a few questions about what do you put in this? Can I have this? Can I have that? But I'm a dietitian, so I'm a little bit more knowledgeable and can make it work. But for sure, if you are following a diet and you feel like it has led you to really miss out on socialization or family and friend time, that might be crossing the boundary where it's not serving its purpose to you anymore. And
right,
that maybe there's a happy medium. And actually, I work with a lot of people on figuring that out,
right.
of
Now, do you
where
think
we
that a
can get you the
happy
most. Uh-huh.
Go ahead,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I cut you off.
No,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Do you think that a happy medium might be something like meal planning and, doing something like that maybe?
Yeah, so I love meal planning, but I am not one of those people that does like a month at a time. I can't. That's just too much. It feels really hard. But bless the people that can, because you are eliminating a bunch of decisions later on.
Right,
Now, if that feels super overwhelming to you, don't feel like meal planning isn't something that you can do. Just maybe whatever day of the week you decide to go grocery shopping, maybe have 3 recipes in mind. I'm going to make it sometime this week. Check your pantry ahead of time, of course, to make sure you don't already have things. And then make one on Monday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday. And you've got the leftovers. And those leftovers are your best friend, because now, if you're going to work, you no longer have to spend 20 minutes of your lunch break going out and trying to find food. So already it's stress reduction there. You know it's something that you enjoy, and presumably you made something that's pretty healthy for yourself. So the people that get the best success out of following whatever dietary changes they made are usually doing some sort of meal planning and prepping. And also, you save so much time. Oh, it's so nice when you're like, nope, I got the leftovers. I'm good. Or you can repurpose things. Like some people really don't like leftovers, but you can take, like, I don't know, some plain chicken, and, like, let's say you're baking it or roasting it. Do one type of seasoning on one of the piece of chicken, like if you're living by yourself. If you're doing family, it's kind of hard. But you can still repurpose things. One day you can eat the chicken, I don't know, with brown rice, and then the next day you put it in tortillas and it's like Mexican themed. So don't feel as though it has to be super complicated, but definitely doing things so that you have leftovers and you're not doing last minute decisions is a great way to make sure you stay on track.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Now, I often say to myself, I wish I could just take everything out of my house and all the food out of my house and just start all over.
Start fresh.
Um, and do you think that that's something that people should think about doing? I mean, that it's probably wasteful when you think about it, but sometimes you do have to remove the things that might tempt you to eat more of it
Mm.
often,
Mhm.
that's not healthy for you. Like
This
those
is a hard,
pesky
yeah.
potato chips.
Yes. The potato chips are tricky. So, what I would say is, for some people, when you're starting the new habit, it does feel easier. Maybe not throw them all away. Maybe you can donate them. Maybe you can bring them over to a family or friend's house and say, hey, can you just hold on to this box of food for me? Like, it's too hard for me right now while I'm trying to implement new changes. But I go back to the life is short thing, where if your favorite thing is one flavor of potato chip, and it's not a situation where, like, you open the bag and you really can't control yourself, then that's a different conversation. But if it's just something that really brings you joy, I would say actually bring that back in, but you may notice when you have changed all of your eating habits, your taste buds change. They're all gone in the course of a month. So oftentimes people that start making a lot of healthier changes, move away from the processed foods, find that the things that they used to like before are maybe too sweet or too salty now.
Mm.
So you may bring those potato chips back in after you feel like you've gotten a good head start on, okay, this is what I'm going to do for my snacks. Like these are the ideal things that I want to do, but I miss these. You might bring them back in and be like, whoa, these are really salty. Like this is too much for me now. I'm not enjoying it like I did before. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
'cause
So,
I guess like with anything, if you do anything for
mhm,
30 days, it's gonna become a habit, and that's
yeah.
your palate as well. It will
Mhm.
become a habit to your palate to want something a little healthier.
And I bring that up usually with people when they're reducing sugar. Like at the beginning, if you're used to really, really sweet things, it's hard, but you just do it bit by bit. And then in a month or two, if you've taken it like really slowly and gradually, if you try to go back to one person I worked with, she would get a Starbucks and it had like whatever the normal amount of pumps, maybe three, she was doing like six.
Ooh,
And yeah, it was
yeah,
really, really sweet. And she was like, okay, I'm going to do it gradually. She got it all the way down to like a half pump. Um, and then one time, some all human error, the person just didn't put in the half pump, had put it to the normal or
right,
the one that is included, three pumps. And
right.
she said it was so sweet she could not drink it.
Yeah,
It was just too
yeah,
much. So, yes, definitely your body changes, what you crave changes. Um, because it's a whole new equilibrium for yourself, and people sometimes look at me and they say, you're just making this up. But eventually, if you keep doing healthy foods consistently, there will be times that you say, I just really want a salad right now. And
right.
you may think to yourself like, oh, who am I?
Yeah,
But I promise you it does
what?
happen. You want it because you like how you feel.
Yeah,
If you're feeling better, if you're making the choices that really support your health, then you don't want to stop. Once you see the results, it's
right.
easier and easier to stick with. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and as it's changing your palate, it's also changing your mind. It's also changing your body, and it's starting to encompass a healthier lifestyle in general. You
Yes.
might feel like you want to work out a little bit more, and you might
Yes.
you need to walk a little bit more, little
Hmm.
things like that. Just get in some movement, and to go with your healthy eating. It's such a
Yes, for
different mind.
sure.
How do you?
Well,
How
think
do you?
about it.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
No,
you can
think
go.
about it with people that are drinking alcohol or eating like a really
Right,
processed meal. You feel really crappy afterwards. If you
right,
drank too much, the next day you are exhausted. For people with lupus, maybe you're really inflamed. Like, no, you're not going to get up and be like, yeah, I'm going to go on a brisk walk. It just doesn't support that behavior. So, yes, you are 100% right. The healthy behavior, actually, this is a nice visual I tell people. It's like train tracks. So, you've got two train tracks, and the wheels get really nice in those tracks, and it makes it easier for the wheels to just keep going, going, going. Um, if you're on one train track and it's unhealthy behavior, eating processed foods, you're eating really salty foods, then you have a soda with it, then you eat a salty food, back and forth, back and forth. You're not going to exercise. You're not going to sleep well because now you have acid reflux because you just ate something really greasy and fried. Then the next day you're tired. You're not going to exercise, and then you want caffeine. So now you go to Starbucks and you get the really sugary, high caffeine thing, and it just begets itself. Whereas if you're on a healthy track, now you feel better, you have more energy, you do more exercise, you sleep better because you did the exercise, then you want it. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do really see the effect in people where once you start on one track, it's really easy for the wheel to keep rolling. So don't
yeah,
feel as though the beginning changes of taking away bad habits and replacing them with better habits for you are always going to be so difficult. It eventually becomes a habit, just like anything else. And one day after you do it 1,000 times, you won't even remember how you used to do it. And maybe an old friend will be like, remember when you used to get like the Taco Bell Supreme 36 ounces of soda, this,
Right,
that, the
right,
other
right.
thing. And you're like, oh, yeah, that would make me feel terrible now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
After, it's that whole habit, changing the habit, changing your mindset, changing your relationship with food. I tell my husband this all
Yes.
the time. We have to change our relationship with food because I find that sometimes people are just eating to soothe themselves,
Yeah.
you
Unfortunately,
know.
our world is really stressful.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And when we're doing those behaviors for so long, we have to learn how to switch habits or switch addictions, I guess.
Yeah.
How,
Yeah. It's a coping mechanism. No. And
yeah,
you know, all the food manufacturing, like companies, these big, big, big multinational billion-dollar companies
right,
spend a lot of money and a lot of research on how to make that food as addictive as possible.
right,
So you are up against a lot of research of how to make that chip as crunchy and a little bit salty, and like it's a lot. So don't feel as though you're failing if those things, if you fall into an old habit of using food as something, as a coping mechanism. But there are also many, many things that you can replace it with, that as you get into the habit, it gets easier, and it also gives you better results too, because food, I mean, is really only satisfying for like the moment that you're chewing it.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. It's not, yeah, it doesn't last with you for for the rest of the day as that high, that euphoric
Yeah.
feeling.
Mm-mm. And it
Yeah,
doesn't solve the problem either.
right, right. Well, it's
Yeah.
just like you said, just like drugs. Food is a drug,
It is. Yeah.
sugar, salt, that's all, foreign stuff that we're putting in our bodies that give
Mhm.
us a dependency on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very good information. I mean,
And I
it's like, I don't know if I know before I was an athlete before, so
mhm.
eating certain ways was important. But if
Yeah.
you're just eating like you've been taught to eat,
Mm.
what do you suggest people do to really change that mindset?
Yeah, that is a really great big question. So, when you say athlete, I actually find that a lot of people that were athletes before had kind of a relationship with food, like this is my fuel to get things accomplished, which actually
Absolutely.
is not a bad perspective. It's definitely easier to go from that to figuring out healthy things than, unfortunately, like, oh, when I'm sad, when I'm angry, when I'm frustrated, I turn to food. That's really hard, because that now you need to replace with a different habit. But anyone can do it. I do think that there is, the goal, and it doesn't matter what cuisine you grew up eating, it doesn't matter what food habits you grew up with. The goal is, I want to take care of myself, and I love myself, and I honor my body, and I know that what I'm putting into it becomes my body. So there
Mhm.
also has to be self-love in there. Unfortunately, people that are dealing with whatever that history may be, maybe it was a little bit of trauma, maybe
Right,
it was a weird family dynamic around the food,
right.
where, oh, you have to clean your plate, or you're punished,
Mhm.
you don't get to eat dinner. Like, if there's too much other stuff in there, it can be really hard to get back to, I love my body, I want it to feel good, so I'm going to feed it things that make it feel good. And
Right.
having that balance and that acceptance too of our body, however it may look,
That's
whatever.
ooh, that's a
Yeah.
really
it's,
good point. That
yeah, it's a
whole
lot.
acceptance, because I think that we are so stuck on what society believes is acceptable.
Yes.
And it's just like having to accept that you have a chronic illness, accepting how you look,
Yes.
as you're dealing with food and as you're eating and things of that nature is very important. That's
And oftentimes with people, I say, like, unfortunately, weight loss is something people come to a dietitian a lot for. But that that number on the scale means so little. in the grand scheme of life. And it's also affected by so many things. If you have more muscle mass, your weight may go up, but you may notice that you feel 1,000 times better and your clothes fit more loosely. So it is literally your body's relationship to the earth based upon our gravitational pull, which
Right.
makes it sound boring and scientific, but it is. It is, but there's so much pressure on looking a certain way or being a certain number on the scale, and it's really hard because it's basically clouding that good relationship
Yeah.
of I eat when I'm hungry, I stop when I'm satisfied, I
Right.
need to choose the things that make me feel good. um yeah, it's hard. A lot of people spend their whole life figuring it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Just trying
Mhm.
to figure out how to not even be healthy, just be thinner. And I think that sometimes we get so focused on being thin, and it's more important for us to be healthy, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and sometimes that might encompass something totally different than what we think it is.
Mhm, mhm. And unfortunately, sometimes people, when they are really sick, lose weight and get that positive reinforcement. "Oh, you
Right.
lost weight, you look so great." And it's like, you have no idea what's going underneath. Yeah.
Right. You have no clue as to why I lost the weight and how unhealthy
Mhm.
it was for me to do it
Yeah.
the way that it happened. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're gonna start wrapping up.
Yeah.
Um, what's the best advice? Like 3 pieces of advice that you can give lupus warriors and anybody that's out there that's listening to you know, just to be healthier, to eat healthy,
Yeah.
to to think healthier. And what kind of advice can you give us?
First and foremost, I love my lupus warriors. 9 out of 10 people with lupus are women. First and foremost, the hardest thing to do is put your health as a top priority. So,
Mm,
unfortunately, women more often than not are primary caregivers, whether it's children, parents, some family member, the dog, somebody. Women are taken care of more than oftentimes men. And it's a blanket statement, but it's true a lot of times. So then suddenly your list is here, a bunch of things, and your health is on the bottom. And that right there, that's number one, the thing that before any of the other things, you have to do that. So you just have to prioritize. When I need rest.
right,
And if somebody else has to pick up the slack, that's what it has to be.
right.
If the floors aren't getting mopped today, the floors are not getting mopped today, and that's okay. It's hard. It's really hard because so many women are burnt out, and you're already being pulled in 1,000 directions. And then if you're cooking for your family, now
Right.
suddenly you're trying to make dietary changes, and they're like, "Oh, what is that? I don't want to eat that." And then you're making 3 meals. That's exhausting too. So
It
it's
is.
tough. I really empathize, but you just have to. The first thing has to just be that my health is a priority. Now, the practical application of how that happens,
Hmm.
that's actually number one thing that I work with people about. Like, how are we going to make this work for you with your schedule, with your needs, with your family's needs, how much time you have? Because it's tough. It's tough. It's tough. So, that above all is just making your health a priority and figuring out where I think the phrase is like the low hanging fruit. So yeah. So what changes are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck?
Hmm.
Um, and that could be for someone, maybe they're doing something that's really unhealthy and they don't even like it that much. Maybe they're just drinking soda out of a habit, but it doesn't really bring them joy. It's just an old thing, and changing to water could be really easy for them.
Right.
So certainly that's what I help people do one on one. In terms of, if it's okay to segue into this
Oh
one.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. In terms of my group program, so I am starting one in February. That's actually what I help people do too. So even though it's not one on one, you have unlimited email contact with me, but we do step by step. So everything's organized, everything, the guidance is there, the workbooks are there, the resources are there, so that even though every single little thing may not be the perfect fit for you or for your lifestyle or for your schedule right now. I lead you through the process of trial and error and figuring it out and working through the kinks of, okay, well, I tried it and you know what? That's just not going to happen. And I'll approach it a different way and figuring out exactly how that's going to be a best fit. So, yes, my group program is starting February 8th, and it involves a class once a week. We have a weekly meeting where basically for 45 minutes, I cover a big topic that has to do with lupus. So, whether it's the basics of lupus in terms of how it affects people and what to look out for, and the sorts of conversations and questions to ask your doctors, lupus nutrition that works for the whole family. I actually have special guests coming too. So, I have a pharmacist that's coming to talk about all the lupus medications. Yes, she is excellent. She actually is like very well researched specifically on lupus medication. So not just your CVS pharmacist. Yeah. Although they know a lot too. I'm not
Right, right, right.
dissing on them. Yeah. The advanced nutrition for lupus. So like, okay, we've done the basics. Now how do we fine tune it even more? I'm having a psychotherapist come and talk about coping mechanisms and how to get away from food being the primary one, if it is for someone. That mindfulness, just taking that stress and toning it down, because that causes the inflammation. It releases cortisol and it is bad for us. Another one about exercise and movement, and then other lifestyle and environmental influences. And then I leave the last class for who my participants are. So if it's one group of participants, they're really, really interested in a topic, then we take that last class and we spend a lot more time on it. And if it's a different group of participants and something else really piques their interest, then that's what we work on too. So,
That is awesome.
um,
That is
yeah,
awesome.
thank you. But I just had no time for one-on-ones. I can't do it all day long. Like there's so many people that
Yeah,
need help. And
yeah,
the group coaching also allows people to support each other too.
absolutely, and which is very important in all aspects of dealing with lupus. Absolutely very important. So, could you do me a favor? Could you put your website and your Instagram
Yes.
account and your Facebook
Yes,
account
yes,
all in the
yes.
chat for me? I'm holding the phone here and I'm trying to type it.
I know you're doing so
Everybody
much. So
on Instagram has seen me type everything.
everything is the lupus dietitian. So I made it as easy for people as possible. So you
Awesome.
can find me on Facebook, the lupus dietitian, on Instagram, the lupus dietitian. Please, please, please go to my website. If you get to my website and you subscribe as an emailer, what you get today is very exciting. You get a nice handout about 3 ways to reduce inflammation today. You don't need to go to the grocery store. You do not need to go buy anything weird or expensive. It's 3
Right.
things that you can implement right after we get off.
Awesome.
Then also, you will get a very, very, very special and secret coupon code for email
Uh-oh.
subscribers only to take a lot of money off that group coaching program. So it actually reduces the price by a very considerable amount. So please consider being an email subscriber. You'll also get, in the future, you'll get first dibs on my blog posts, which has tips and advice and information on living best with lupus, and first notification about anything else cool coming down the pipeline.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm
Yeah,
going to copy this over. I think you sent it to me privately.
I
Let's
know it says private chat. I wasn't really sure where to put it. Thank you
It's
so
okay.
much.
I'm going to copy it over so that
Yeah,
people can
please.
have this because it's so important. I think your information is just amazing and you have
Thank
such a
you.
great spirit for
Thank you so
helping.
much.
And it's
Yes.
always good to have information from someone who understands what we're going through. You know, whether you've been through it before or you're still going through it with us, it's always good just to have that person that understands exactly what you're dealing with and how everything's
Yes.
going. Let me get everything
Thank
else
you.
here.
Yeah, and for sure, the reason that I have gone from, okay, I'm seeing everybody with all of their dietary questions, to I think my purpose, my experience has now made me uniquely qualified to use my expertise, which is like my master's, my decade of
Right.
experience being a dietitian, my life experience to help people with lupus that feel lost and confused. They want to stop having flares. I want to help all of those people. If I can reach everybody, that would be amazing. Figure
Right.
out what works for them and empower them
Ooh,
to take control of their lupus.
I love it because you know what? It's so important for us to have that empowerment to really have at least some control over certain things in our lives. And
Of
we know
course.
that our food and what we're doing, our movement and our mindsets, it all serves a purpose for us as we deal with lupus. And they all need to be in balance. So I love that you're doing
Mhm.
it. I love that. I love
Thank you
that.
so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. You are a great interviewer. You had
Oh,
such fantastic questions.
thank
And
you.
thank you for the participants too.
Yeah, I so appreciate you coming on today, and we'll definitely be doing some other stuff together as time permits for you.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just enjoyed speaking with you, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Well, thank you.
I know you have small children, so I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything last statement that you want to make prior to us ceasing this interview?
No, really just thank you. Thank you to all the people that tuned in. Thank you so much for listening to me and putting in your questions. Please, 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 if you have any motivation to start feeling better and to be able to, at the very least, be more knowledgeable about lupus, or at the very most, are like, hey, that's it. I'm changing everything. I am tired of this taking over my life. I am tired of being tired. I'm tired of this joint pain. I'm ready. I'm motivated. I can start tomorrow. Follow me, reach out to me, DM me. I am here. I want to help. And definitely, I mean, it's less than a month away. Take advantage of my group program. It is going to be a great community of like-minded people that really are motivated to make changes and start feeling better.
Awesome. 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 Guys, go to the lupusdietitian.com. You can find her on Instagram, Facebook at the Lupus Dietitian. So important to begin taking control over your health with your eating first. So thank you so much, Tanya. I so
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. And I will definitely be in touch so we can do more things together.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Everyone, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Amazing, amazing, amazing information that was given by the lupus dietitian. I'm doing two different things at once, so it becomes so difficult, but I love the information that she has given us. And please, guys, go to her website. She has such a wealth of information. She is giving us so much good information. And if you can, try and join into this challenge that she has in February so that we can all just, get a little healthier as we're dealing with lupus. I want to thank everyone for coming on tonight, and I hope that you learned something from the lupus dietitian. Like we said, with anything, make sure that you're checking with your doctor first. But I want you to go on over to her website, go on over to her IG. It's all listed down in the chat area. And I will actually put out another image so that you can have her information and you can click on it and go directly to her page. So thank you so much to Tanya. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you, everybody on Instagram. Thank you, everybody on Facebook, on YouTube for tuning in. And I hope that you are able to go to her page tonight and just read about some information that she's given us. So this has been the Healthy Kitchen with Lupus and Color and the Lupus Dietitian. We look so forward to more information that she can give us. So you guys have a great evening, and I hope that you have a good night. All right. Bye-bye.